traditional Islam and Christianity. And I think that's just the reality. But I'm not talking about the cultural or the Islamic elite, so much of that. I'm here to speak about the actions of and interventions of Lagos State government. I'm not speaking as a Lagos State official. I'm actually just doing a critique. Is this my working? Okay, so I'm just doing a critique of it. That's our the built heritage now. I'm talking about the built heritage because, like you said, I'm also here representing legacy, and we are part of our interest is about the preservation of our built heritage. So, from the international context, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 11 Target 4 talks about protecting the world's cultural and natural heritage. And we also know that UNESCO, we have been said so many times here, we have 2 UNESCO listed sites in Nigeria, and a lot of work has been done in terms of preservation of cultural and natural heritage. Next slide, okay. So, talking about Lagos State, we have quite a lot of buildings that are heritage buildings, heritage king of Lagos State. Sorry. So we have the first one, that's the old Federal Secretariat. That's in Lagos Island, and it's derelict now. I've talked about, and I'm trying to look at, okay, in what state is each of these buildings, so that I'll talk about how Lagos State can actually assist in improving the state of these buildings. The next one is the Christchurch Cathedral and Marina. It's in use and very well maintained. We have the third one, that's Dojo Bar. That was demolished, I think in 2017, some years back. Yes, it was a listed building, listed by Lagos State, but a developer got a permit and demolished it. Although there was a stop work order, but the danger, or rather the damage has been done. The next one, that's the Shitabe Mosque. It's in use, not maintained. Well, it's maintained because it's been renovated once, but could be better maintained. We have the National Theatre, currently undergoing renovation. That's General House. It's also in use, and it's well maintained. And then the last one is the Water House in Lagos Island. I think it's on Kakawa. Yes, so that's also it's occupied, I think, for now, maybe some families who occupy it. So, on the federal level, we have the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. I don't want to talk too much about it because we have the representative here, but they are tasked with identifying and designating buildings as heritage buildings. And they, on the federal level, have they keep a list of buildings and places of heritage and cultural interest. But on the Lagos State, at the Lagos State level, we have the Lagos State Tourism, Arts and Culture. They have also been here today. And part of their mandate is to identify, list, protect heritage buildings, those that are not yet listed by the NCLM. Then they have, we have the Lagos State Listed Sites Law, number 5 of 2011, that makes it mandatory to obtain the governor's consent before any alteration or renovation can be carried out on a listed site. So the law makes provision for the government to provide funds to maintain some of those listed sites that qualify for financial assistance based on their rating under the law. So we also have the mandate of the Lagos State Tourism and Culture. Then we also have the Lagos State Records and Archives Bureau, LASRA. LASRA is more about keeping the archives of Lagos State, the records, and of course there's a lot of overlapping. They also do preserve artifacts and whatnot, everything that has to do with our cultural and natural heritage. And I think LASRA plays a very important role, because I think one of the challenges Africa has had as a whole is our poor written culture. So most of our tradition has been passed down orally, and a lot of it has been lost. So having a place where you actually have culture written or pictured, captured is very, very important. And more so at a time when we are having issues like climate change, where the reality is that a lot of these buildings that are very old may not be able to withstand some of the coming climate change disasters we're going to have. Keeping records of them in terms of their history, in terms of pictures and stuff like that, may be what our children may be able to meet. I think the flood that happened last in the north, earlier, I think last month, some cultural and some very old buildings collapsed. Some very old walls collapsed. So that is the reality. So LASRA is an initiative of Lagos State, which is very commendable, and which I think the NCMM should also, I don't know, maybe have a department under them where they, keep these records of listed buildings and all that. That's digital records. Then, what have been the actions and interventions of Lagos State in terms of buildings and places of cultural and natural heritage? There are many examples of Lagos having done one thing or the other. This picture is a picture of Freedom Park in Lagos Island. It used to be the Broad Street prison. That was where the colonial masters, that was the prison where they kept locals who had committed one crime or the other. And it was closed down after independence, it was closed down for a long time. And then Lagos State decided to, restore it and give it a new meaning. So rather than being a prison, it's now a freedom park, and hosts cultural events and whatnot. So then we also have the intervention of the UNESCO intervention about that was also in 2011. Prohibiting the trading, illicit import, export, transfer of our natural artifacts and heritage, which has led to some, let me say, some change. For example, now we have some of our artifacts from Britain being brought back, like the Benin arts, wherever, and then they are actually trying to put up their own museum to keep their own artifacts. The owners of cultures and artifacts and buildings are in the best place to actually take care of those things. Next slide. Okay, so what are some of the challenges with the protection of listed buildings? According to some researchers, or some who have written about this, one of it is that there's greater emphasis placed on intangible heritage. That is, when you say heritage, we have the tangible and the intangible. Tangible are buildings, the artifacts and things like that, intangible, the culture, the festival like Eyo and all that. So there's a tendency for more emphasis on and more money to be spent on intangible heritage than tangible heritage. When they are doing the festival in Lagos, a lot of money is spent and there's so much about it. However, a lot of the buildings that have to do with our cultural and natural heritage are wasting and rotting away. Then also poor collaboration with physical planning authority. So when we talk about heritage, like what happened with the Lojo Bar or Olaya House, when it was demolished, it was demolished by a private developer. He got a permit from the town planning authority, physical planning. They gave him a demolition permit because there's no proper collaboration between the cultural ministry and physical planning. So, and he had done, he did it in a very fast way, and by the time the storm order came, the damage had been done. So there needs to be collaboration with, it has to be a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary thing, the preservation of heritage. It cannot be done by Ministry of Culture or whatever. It can't be done by them alone. They have to collaborate in order to really get this building. And then also, in this age of climate change, we also need other ministries, like, for example, the wastewater services, because flooding is now a big issue. So some of these buildings that are under the threat of flood need the attention of the ministries like the wastewater ministry. Next slide, please. So my recommendations for Lagos State is that they need to introduce heritage managers at local government levels, because we have so many heritage buildings and artifacts at all local governments, and we find out that when people just come, they buy a property, they demolish and rebuild without any recourse to what was there and what was significant. And until we have heritage being at the local level, that we can actually have a robust Lagos State tourism and cultural program. Then also paradigm shift there should be a paradigm shift from preserving them in isolation to putting them to adaptive use. When I started, I showed you some pictures of some of these heritage buildings. Okay, so that's the St. George's Hall. I talked about Jekyll House. I talked about the cathedral. All those places are in good shape. Why? Because they are in use. So they are being maintained. Not be optimal, but they are being maintained because they are used. One of the things that happened to Olaya House was it was a listed building, but it was abandoned, and nobody was using them. So this, listing a building, and the old federal secretariat, every time I pass by, I look at it like one day this thing will just go down, and somebody will just come and demolish it without, because if it's not put into proper use, then at the end of the day, somebody thinks, this thing is an environmental nuisance, and we need this land for something else. So we have to move to adaptive use, making adaptive use of these heritage buildings so that they can be properly maintained. Then funding, we need funding to keep these buildings, to restore them and also to keep them in good shape. Then heritage impact. Heritage impact should be included in environmental impact assessment. When, part of the physical planning requirements is you submit an EIA for whatever project you want to do. So they should include the aspect of heritage. What are how does it affect the heritage buildings? Are there any heritage buildings on the site or around the region, and how are they going to be impacted? So So those are my recommendations for having a robust heritage the heritage listed buildings program in the US. Thank you very much.